Good evening. Today is Monday, December 20th, 2021, and it's the 78th episode of New Paradigms. I'm your host, Sargis Sangari. My honored guest today is a good friend of mine from Japan, visiting us here in the U.S., Masako Ganaha. Masako is a Japanese foreign correspondent from Okinawa who's well known for her coverage and research in Japan, Taiwan, and the United States on the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese Communist Party information operational campaigns against the U.S. and Japan and worldwide. More importantly, though, she is here today because Masako has been in the southern border. She has been in South America, and she has been following the crisis that has been caused by our southern border non-security issues. And in this particular case, with Michael Yon, a good friend of mine also, who covers U.S. issues in the southern border. And she's here today to talk about the lessons learned and how we may be able to maybe bypass what the issues are caused by the migrants on the political and economic weapon being used against the U.S. and Japan, as has been done in the past. So, Masako, I'm glad to have you here. I do know that you have been spent a lot of time and months on the southern border, especially downstream in Mexico, and also you were in Central America, and you were following the migration, what we call the New Death March, specifically of those migrants into North America and the homeland in the U.S. And wanted to see what was your most greatest lesson learned, and have a little bit of discussion about that to see what were some of the issues that you saw that maybe from a Japanese perspective would be important for our Americans to understand. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Colonel Sangari. It is my honor to be appear on your show. And today I'd like to talk about what I have seen down the border, the things that I cover in United States, see the same problem happening in Japan too. That's why I have a YouTube channel. Many of my Japanese followers see same issue. And we are dealing with same kind of enemy. That's why many Japanese are very interested in American politics. And one of which is migrant issue. Even though Japan is surrounded by ocean and we have different situation, there is a inter force is trying to modify our law to open the borders and kind of welcome those migrants. But they do this in the name of humanitarian aid or to help refugees. But what they're actually doing is destroying Japan or destroying United States. So I'd like to share with you what I found during my report this time.
No, and that's why we had you here, Masaka. Look, I know that one of the issues is that Japan has a long history of really controlling its borders, but also at the same time does allow all nationalities and races to legally migrate into Japan. As an example, I know that recently on the 16th, I provided a talk for the Japanese Diet on what are some of the issues that Japan is dealing with when it comes to China, specifically in its information operation, because China is involved in most of these issues that we're dealing with even in the U.S. But I know that as an example, in World War II, Japan gave shelter to hundreds and thousands of even Jews and Jewish refugees who had escaped really to Japan for protection, even though Japan had a agreement with Nazi Germany when it came to the war in World War II. They were not interested in what the Nazi Germans were doing when it came to the Holocaust. So even in that capacity, they actually gave refuge to the Jews, and despite even the protests from the Nazis, and even the Tokyo Symphony during the war itself actually was led by a Jewish immigrant who was the person who actually necessarily was able to represent the Japanese people. And but although the Japanese seem to have, it seems in the recent years have kind of bowed to that pressure from whether it be the current U.S. administration or others to allow not just migrants in Japan, but worst of all, also give them an opportunity to even vote in Japan itself. So I want your understanding as to how did we get here? How did Japan get put in this type of a position by the current administration and the people who are actually trying to have individuals that are non-Japanese to vote in Japan?
Oh, so this is not about human rights. It's about attacking Japan. And one of the way to attack Japan is using those migrants or human rights. And actually today, currently, right now, in one of the city in Tokyo, it's called Musashino City. They have a city assembly talking about whether they should give foreign residents to give right to vote. And it's been huge, hot topic in Japan. And many of the Japanese oppose this. And even the supporter of current mayor opposed this policy because recently she just got elected. But when she ran for the mayor, she did not propose any of this topic. Once she got elected, she suddenly proposed that she's going to discuss about implement this topic, this what should I say, giving the right to foreign nationals. And it requires only 3 months to live in this city, and they are allowed to vote. And many of conservative people are worried and concerned because even though she says that only it's not about national security, it's only about the things that's related to just a city, but there is it is a scapegoat. In the past, actually, in Okinawa, there is a town which already allowed foreign nationals to vote. And it was 2015. There was a huge issue whether they would accept the deployment of Japanese self-defense force. And there are many leftists who moved to this island in order to have many votes against those deployment. And also they had a referendum that allowed to vote for not only the local people, but also foreign nationals and even junior high students. Fortunately, local people had, I would say, they are worried about invasion by China. So they voted to allow Japanese self-defense force to come to their island. But once they allowed this to happen, they're gonna say, why we cannot do this in our city? And they will start to implement this system to many places. And this leads to actually taking away the right to vote from Japanese people. So right now, I'm also worried about what's going to happen to Japan.
No, it's not going to be easy. I can just imagine it because you're enfranchising the Japanese people, the citizen. And they're doing the same thing here in near Europe. They have said that for local issues, they're going to have non-citizens vote. But the reality is, even here, you have two parties, as you know, Republican, Democrat. The Democratic Party has all these far leftists, and what they're doing is they're running the far leftists against those conservative Democrats, knocking them out and coming out with these crazy ideas. They're not part of the Democratic Party, they're just part of the far left socialists, and it seems like the same agendas have taken root in Japan. So my question, I guess, would be, as a follow-on, how can Japan maintain a democracy if the Japanese citizens are disenfranchised of their right to vote specifically? And doesn't this seem kind of hypocritical when it comes to other nations that are forcing this? Some people would even say neo-fascist organizations that are promoting this at the same time, while they're going back and attacking Japan and calling Japan's history a non-democratic history, where, as I told you just in the recent comments, that even in World War II, Japan bucked against the Nazis and allowed Jewish refugees to seek haven within Japan itself.
Yes, if we keep going if we keep going on the rail that leftists made, then we will definitely lose Japan. And I've been wondering what we can do, and it's very difficult situation now. But in order to solve the problems happening in Japan, I realized that we cannot just fight as Japan, not only Japan. So the reason why I came to United States is because I feel that there is a necessity for all the conservatives in many countries get united and share this. How should I say? We need to share information or to be allies in this fight. And we would, as a Japanese, we need to learn from many things from American conservatives, how to fight against liberalism.
Well, look, I agree with you. I think we got to unite. I think a lot of people didn't know that the same thing that is happening here is being forced on Japan. And again, who's really behind it? I put it on the communist Chinese, because even the most current ban that was placed back again because of the so-called COVID restrictions from Americans traveling to Japan, it was open for a little bit. Americans right now still, as of today, cannot travel to Japan because of the COVID issue, the new spikes. However, the Chinese can, which makes no sense. You're allowing the Chinese to get there, but Americans, which are one of your best allies, doesn't have the opportunity. And I think we do a better job of controlling COVID here in the States than the Chinese have ever done controlling internally. If it wasn't for them, Wuhan wouldn't have been the epicenter of the virus that was launched against the world. And they could keep on saying that it was from an animal, but we haven't found an animal in the 2 years now that has contracted COVID from another animal. So everybody knows it came out of a lab. It's just a matter of that you're probably never going to be able to prove it in accordance to what the international standards are to proving it. The Chinese are going to suppress it as long as possible. I know we had the same issues when we had outbreaks of these type of viruses in Russia, or I should say Soviet Union, but we weren't able to get that information until the Soviet Union dissolved. Now, my question would be, I know that you've been to the southern border, you've actually physically tracked this, and you see the similarities between what's happening here and also what's happening in Japan. I know that today, for those who don't know, is actually the anniversary, December 20th, of Operation Just Cause, where we actually, United States went in and liberated Panama again from Noriega, a drug lord who had taken over the nation. And we did that because we wanted to make sure that we had freedom of maneuver for our Navy ships when it came down to the Panama Canal, so we could conduct operations in the Pacific as needed for American security. But I know today, as I was talking to a friend of mine earlier, the reality is that China and its conglomerates have literally bought Panama. And tomorrow, if they decide to, if you were in a shooting war with China, they could literally close off the Panama Canal to American shipping. With that said, what did you see when you were in Texas on our southern border, especially when it came with what the National Guard soldiers were doing there, and on the migrant issue, on that onslaught, that you could share with us?
Yes. I would like to show you the photos or video that I sent you to share with the audience. We actually saw Rio Grande, many immigrants crossing the river right in front of us. And what I saw, nobody stopping. There are no walls, nothing, just a Rio Grande River, and it's very shallow, so people can just walk through. And the video that you're showing right now is in Eagle Pass, and we encountered a hotspot, and there are about around 50 migrants. And we were taking video from a distance, and those migrants turn themselves into border patrol. And then they will claim asylum. So those are typical things happening every day. We hear that 1,000 or 3,000 migrants caravan coming in, but this is everyday thing. It's not like a once in a while big event. It's every day, and nobody's stopping, and they know how to do this thing. And at this, you can see on the ground, there are many things thrown away. There are many ID cards or clothes. And when you see the ID cards, you would notice that they're the people who are not eligible to claim asylum, because those ID cards, you could see that they've been living in Chile for 3 years or 5 years. They had decent life, but because you have new president, they know that they will be accepted and they can get money from the government or in NGOs. So they want better life. So they just decided to come, and they will just eaten up your tax money. And as a Japanese, I'm trying to warn Japanese people, because the organization that help those migrants are, for example, UN. And those organizations actually ask donation to Japan. I saw a couple staff who work for UN asking for donation in front of station in Tokyo. And I went, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So if you see the photos that they have at the donation place, they will say, oh, there are many migrants or women with children, they are suffering, they need your help. And poor Japanese people, they just think, oh, they're so, they need some kind of help. So if I can give you a little bit of money, they will be saved. So they don't think any political issue or any information war. They just want to be help. That's how they deceive people. So in short way, Japanese people also help those migrants to invade United States. That's the thing that should not be happening. That's the thing that we should realize and stop it. So when I addressed those issues to Japanese people, there are so many people, even many conservatives, who are interested in politics, that they have donated to UN, and they did not know that even though they're feeling to help those people, but actually they are harming United States, our ally. So it's very twisted, but so we need to come up with an idea to defund those organizations.
Well, unfortunately, it's not just that. People just have to stop giving to them. You have the same issues here where the government is actually taking taxpayer money and giving it to Catholic charities in California. And there's even some Jewish organizations are getting that money. And these charity organizations are actually allowing this process to get through. So these organizations are getting paid. I had written an article and a 1 year anniversary of the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement. And people get a chance, they could go read it. And I looked at in 2015, I should say, how Turkey was using migrants as a weapon system and to be able to keep Europe hostage. It was using it for political and financial gains. Now you fast forward to where we are today, 7 years later, China and others have perfected on this. They don't just use it to make money and influence political issues, especially in the States. They're using it as a means to be able to bring their wants and desires and their individuals into the country. Look, we've caught individuals who actually speak Persian, Iranians who have actually been coyotes that have been bringing people in. Those are bringing selected group of people through this process that are important for them to operate here in the country. And this is can continue until there's an administration change. Unfortunately, when you have money that is being used, it's not good. There was a case here where we found out that the mayor of one of the cities had a influx of homeless people in his city, and he had pushed for money to be supporting various different non-government organizations that could help with this. We come to find out that those non-government organizations were actually tied to him. One of them he was actually on a board of. Fast forward, within 5 weeks, the same homeless people, few of them were interviewed by a news outlet that's following him, and they ended up in another city. And the city they ended up with was a friend of that particular mayor. He was another mayor of another city that was actually pushing for money to be supported again in order to take care of the homeless. Now, people will give money for homeless and immigrants, but they don't know that they're being played. They're actually looking into from the Department of Justice whether or not you had homeless people that were being shuttled at nights from one city to another in order for those mayors to be able to use them to make money. These are the realities of some of the stuff you fall into. They never had a final outcome on the Department of Justice investigation that was looking at those particular mayors because, again, politics got involved, and the political group that they belong to, in this case, I could tell you was the Republicans, did not want to pursue a push to make their mayors look bad. So unfortunately, good people have good heart and they continue to give. The problem is they don't understand that they're being played in the process of how the migrants are being used as not just an economic but a political weapon system for the advantage of one political group to another. In the case of Japan, I'll tell you that the Chinese definitely use it for their advantage to make sure that they always have leverage over Japan. What else are the other issues that you saw? And I know there's a video of police actually catching these migrants in the middle of the city. But what is a messaging that you could give the U.S. And how we and Japanese can work together to counter this possibly?
Yes, I noticed that people actually who live around this town even don't know what is happening. And when I went to Eagle Pass near Rio Grande, where you saw at night there are many migrants turning themselves into a border patrol. We drove after seeing this scenery 2 minutes, and there are golf course or baseball field. People are just playing sports. So it was very interesting contract. America is being invaded by migrants, but American people do not realize and they are enjoying playing sports. So I was very surprised that I thought American people realize what is happening and they're standing up, but uh, I realized that American people still do not realize what is happening, even though they are under invasion. And
Well, look, one day they'll figure it out. Unfortunately, it's going to be too late. And then after that, usually these things don't end up well. And then there's up in a war and end up in a global war. So the people who are benefiting today are going to suffer, to include the poor immigrants who are coming here, who they're giving an opportunity to come. They show up. They're going to suffer in the long run too, because they're going to realize that they were nothing more than a tool that was used. Human trafficking being big, how much money the government makes off of them. It's unfortunate. I know that while you were here in the States, you spoke to Candace Owens, and I know that you had an interview with her, which is wonderful to hear. I know you talked about some of these issues. What was her reaction? What was her thoughts on what you just said?
yes, she was very concerned about the border issue too. And I'm translating her book, Black Out, to Japanese. So I had an opportunity to interview her. And she was talking about not only issue on Black community, but also how people should live. It was like a self-help book. So she was talking government or welfare will make people, what should I say? I don't know that I cannot come up with the right term, but people will go down. So she's dealing with leftist ideology, and those ideology will spoil Black community, and they will make nowadays slavery. Those people, the Democrat people, they only see Black community as voting machine. So they will make Black people feel that they are the victim, and they will propose that if you vote for us, then you will be saved. But in order for them to keep getting votes from them, they have to stay as victims. So those vicious circles. And the things that one of the reasons that I decided to translate her book is because her book talks about not only the things happening in the United States, but also in Japan. People who want to control society or who want to destroy country will also always make conflict and divide society and make us fight each other. And then they will divide and conquer strategy. So I realized that Japanese people need to learn from her book. And we need to realize that Japanese people should not feel as victim, and we need to stand up and fight.
No, you're right. They shouldn't feel as victims. I think Japan has a proud history. When you come from a nation where there were two nuclear bombs used against Japan, and it was able to recover from the ashes to where it became one of the largest economies in the world, and even today is up there in the third economy of the world, with a very aging, community. A lot of Japanese are getting older, and they live a long lives. God bless them. With that said, they have allowed immigrants to come in because it's been a vital part of them to sustain the nation. But they have been part of the fabric of Japan. So Japan has kept its identity historically, even with modern, advancements and modern technology, still is able to reach between the past and today, and be Japanese at core, at heart, with immigrants working within Japan. Unfortunately, you have a group of people today that have to destroy the fabric of a nation, get rid of its borders. It gets rid of what the actual character of that nation is, thinking that they could control. But at the end of the day, they're just they're gonna even destroy their own lives. A few are gonna be able to prosper and make money through the process. Um, with that said, let me ask you, Masako, um, what is some of the final words you could give us today's interview as to what should we do? What is next for you? Where are you going to be going? And what is it that we need to do between U.S. and Japan to work together to stop the current downfall of our national borders and identity?
Yes, what I am trying to address to Japanese people, and I would like to tell American people, is that we need to come together and fight together against common enemy. And there is a phrase changed how I think about our history between Japan and the United States. We fought during World War II, but there is a Professor Jason Morgan. He is good friend of yours. He made a speech at Yasukuni Shrine a couple of years ago. That moved me and changed how I think. He said, the people who start war and people who actually fight in war are different. That's the basis of what I think the relationship between Japan and the United States. And he continued saying that fighting is not over. War ended, but our fighting never ended. It is still continuing. That means that Japanese people and American people, we have actually the same value. Japan first and America first, meaning that we love our own nation and we want to protect our own family. That's the same value. And we do not have to be enemy to each other. And now we need to fight against the globalists who are trying to destroy our countries. So I will keep trying to make connection to American people, not only American people, but also the many conservatives who are fighting to protect their country. For example, people in Poland, they are strongly against migrants, and leftist media is trying to attack them. But there is a famous politician. I've watched his interview on YouTube. He was asked a question by a TV commentator. She said, "How many migrants have you accepted?" And Polish politician, he said, "0." And she kept asking mean questions. "You sounded like you are proud to be not accepting those migrants." And he said, "Of course. You know how many terrorist attacks we have?" He continues, "0." And our people expect our government to protect the family and the country. So even though he is, not even though, but he sounded very cool. And we need politicians like him in Japan too. And I think American people need a politician like him, meaning that politician will serve for its nation and protect country and protect their borders. So
Well,
I'm
look,
going to make connection to, yes.
I think it's well said, Masako. I think, look, I put all this on Chinese Communist Party information operations. They're trying to use it to leverage themselves, and can't wait until the day they burn themselves into a hole, because this sword cuts both ways. So you want to go ahead and use it, God bless you. You don't ever embolden the other side to want to absolutely tear you to pieces by using means and methods. I mean, when you take a migrant woman and you send her through the Geringen Gap and she gets raped, and then now you want me to take this person with this PTSD, everything that she's gone through, and make her a viable citizen of a nation, you're not really caring about that person. If you cared about that person has means and ways to get into the country legally and do it in a way where they're productive members of the society, not show up at your doorstep with every possible problem that is in their hands. And money doesn't fix everything. It just doesn't. It's about building those relationships. If you want to tear relationships apart in the middle of a nation, go right ahead. I think the people in America have figured it out. In my district, I ran for office against a woman who's a position holder for the Democratic Party. She's been here and replaced two other people from her party for 75 years now. She's been in a position in her party longer than most wars have taken place between nations. And tomorrow, she talks a big game about caring about immigrants and migrants. She'll never allow an Indian, a Greek, an Assyrian, a black, a Jew of conservative values, in any other group, the Koreans who constantly go out and vote for her because one Korean guy has been tagged as being her chogi boy, as they would say in Korea, to be able to run things for her. She'll never step down and allow any of them to take her position. She will die in office if nobody runs against her this year or 2 years from now, and she will be replaced by her family member. In most nations, we call those people dictators. But these dictators make a lot of money on playing the migrant issue. The only thing I would tell folks out there, stop supporting them. Stop giving them money. Stop taking your vote and giving it to them. Even I would say to the Japanese, don't, if you can't move your finger from here to vote out the far left guy who's destroying your nation, then you're useless to your nation. I mean, how can you say that we are proud Japanese, but we cannot move our finger from here to here because somebody out there has been working with the Chinese to put you in a position where you cannot vote out these so-called far leftists, and they're now even here in the U.S. they're actually coming into their own party and destroying that party to be able to ensure that this will continue. And a lot of that money comes from Chinese conglomerates that get fed here directly in the United States. And we know how that money flows and then actually is given to the coffers of a lot of these politicians in order to just keep them beholden to the conglomerate money that's going to hopefully, for them, get them reelected for a couple of more years. So I hope the same thing happens. That was my piece, my take as far as how maybe we can help the Japanese. And I hope that the Japanese, as I had done that video for the Japanese diet, were able to take some points off of it. I know Jason Morgan, beautiful American patriot who spent all his time in Japan, because we do want to also help our Japanese brethren. And I think at this level, what we can do is just build those networks, as you said. It's not always about the money. It's just building a network and making sure that we reset stuff away from war. Because if you don't reset this, you're eventually going to get into war. And unfortunately, that's going to be bloody for everybody, to include everybody who thought they had come to a safe haven to the U.S. Because even those migrants now would have to go actually get involved in the fighting in a nation where initially was supposed to be a free haven for them. But now, unfortunately, because they realize they're part of a Chinese information operational campaign, they're stuck where they are. Masako, I know that our viewers can catch all your work on the Twitter. And with that said, I'll give you the last word, and then we'll sign off.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity as a Japanese, I'm going to wake many Japanese people up, and I actually see many American samurais, and I'm going to make good connection between those people and Japanese people, and we are going to fight against those enemies. So please, let's fight together.
We will fight together. Masako, it's an honor to have you here. God bless you, and look forward to seeing you in the future. With that said, there's New Paradigms.